Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles.
from Valves and More, an online vintage tube store. And today in Tube Lab number 205, we're going to take a look at brown base 6SN7s and what the heck they are. But first, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Today we're going to take a look at a variety of vintage brown-based 6SN7 tubes. We're going to talk about what they're used for and maybe even have a listen to a few different versions. Stay tuned as Charles shows us what they're all about.
Okay. Let's do the old shuffle here. All right. So we have in front of us an assortment of vintage brown-based tubes, and actually one of them isn't even a 6SN7 here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So what the heck is a brown-based tube, and what does it mean whenever you see one? Well, to understand it, we need to talk about what a normal tube base is and what it's made of. Now keep in mind, we are talking about vintage tubes here. Modern tube bases in most cases are made of different materials these days than their vintage counterparts. And more often it's about looks over functionality. So you might see modern tubes with a brown base or a metal base or something on there, but usually it's just for looks, not for the same reasons these guys did it. Okay, so let's get to these tubes here. We've got a big assortment. And starting over on your left, my right, is an absolutely beautiful Tung-Sol tall bottle. And you can see that brown base. It's got sort of a bit of mottled look to it, darker and lighter brown. And these are just absolutely beautiful tubes, and they are so scarce now. We used to specialize in Tung-Sol 6SN7s.
Well, we still do.
Well, we still do, but ask us how often we find them. It's incredibly rare, and we were lucky enough to find some, but we'll talk about that at the end of the episode, I think. And
yeah, we'll show off what we have available in pairs.
Yeah.
We did get a large lot of brown bases in, and we had a scattering of them throughout our inventory. Mm-hmm. So that kind of prompted the episode.
Yeah, and here's the short version of the exact same tube, or not short, but standard. This one is exceptionally tall, and this is more normal.
Yeah, I mean, that tall Tung-Sol is known as the tall boy.
Yeah, for good reason. And you can see it has the exact same plates, same structure with the micas. It's just in a much shorter bottle. And again, fantastic tubes. They're just like their taller counterpart. They're excellent. And then over here, we have a smattering of Sylvanias. So starting here, we have a GTA brown base. This is called a WGT or a WGTA, so it's an early mil-spec version with the straight plates.
And it's got the support rod.
Yeah.
If you turn it back a little bit.
Let's bring that back into focus here.
Yeah, it's only got one rod.
Mm-hmm. But it does also have these little whiskers here for vibration. And features like that should tell you what these brown bases were used for. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then I'll go into the rest of these tubes here. So what is a brown base? Well, a brown base is typically a tube that was made for military or industrial purposes. And the original black bases that were still made at the same time and made before were made of something called a phenolic resin. Now, a phenolic resin is basically like an early form of plastic, and many of you will probably know it by one of its many trade names, which is Bakelite. Now, Bakelite...
And products made with Bakelite. I think Tung-Sol was one of the brand names of reinforced Bakelite.
Imagine it was a wonder material at the time. Here's something that's strong, that can be molded and shaped into any form. It's a dielectric. It's great.
I mean, household tabletop radios would be... There's advertising showing the brand new Bakelite home radio.
Yep. Yeah, it was a wonder material.
Yeah.
So Bakelite is great. It has a lot of different things going for it, but it has one thing that isn't going for it, and that is that it is very brittle. So it's easy for it to be cracked and damaged. So its hardness, its toughness actually works against it in some cases.
That explains why a lot of our very early brown base tubes have cracks in them?
Well, brown and black base. It was a problem for all
Yeah.
these tubes. You know, as a tube heats up, it expands, the glass expands, it presses against the base. And, you know, also as tubes are handled, they're moved around, they're dropped, they're crushed a little bit. Those
Wiggled in the socket.
Yep.
And
Those bases get damaged. So the military, needing something a little bit tougher, especially whenever it came to tubes that were going into very important systems, like say in a high altitude aircraft or a military jeep or truck that was getting sent into service, or even, you know, a portable radio that was getting dropped with somebody. You had to make sure the tubes were going to survive the vibration, shock impacts, and also the repeated use of heating and cooling on them. So they created a version of phenolic resin. I'm not sure who actually invented it, but pretty much every tube manufacturer started using this for their high-end tubes. And all it is called myconol. So what it is a phenolic resin that has been impregnated with very small particles of mica. And mica is just a natural mineral. It's a natural dielectric, and it added a lot of strength to this. In particular, with high voltage tubes, it helped keep the pins better insulated as well. So it was just a great material. And so generally these days, if you see something with a brown base, it's a higher spec or a higher durability version of the tube, and most often military spec. All right, let's keep going here. So
now, what's the natural color of the resin?
It's actually brown. Yeah. So we were curious about that. We looked up phenolic resin, and this is the assortment of shades that it comes in.
Yeah, there may be some color added as well as additives to each formula, but if you look at the actual plastic of the true vintage base,
Yeah.
they're not consistent in color, and I think that's because we're seeing substantially just the natural
color of the resin. I mean, why would they bother to change it unless they had a very good reason? And here's actually one right here where they likely did dye it a bit. And this is one of the famous RCA red bases. This actually isn't even a 6SN7. It's not even a 6SN7 equivalent, which is the 5692. This is actually the 6SL7 equivalent, which looks almost identical. But we sold out of the other ones. So I wanted to show this on screen so you can see how the base looks. It's very similar to the darker brown.
So they probably put some color into the resin if in fact it's not a plastic base.
Yeah.
But it's also possible those are later production tubes, so it's possible those are just simply plastic bases.
Yeah, it is. And some manufacturers went the other way with this. And instead of using myconol or some other form of phenolic resin, they would put metal bases on them. But they had their own issues with corrosion, with cracking as well. There's also ceramic ones out there for certain specialized tasks, but most often for high durability tubes, you're going to see this kind of base.
Right, and you had stopped off at one of my favorite tubes, the Sylvania 12SN7.
Yeah, so this is in here because even though we have some 6SN7 versions of this tube, we actually don't have any matched pairs, unfortunately, but we do have some of these guys left.
Not very many. I bought a large lot of those years ago, and I thought, wow, I'll be an old man when I finally sell the last one, because who would want a 12SN7? Well, because our universal 6 or 12SN7 kit preamp has been it's just been a bestseller. In fact, we've been selling kits every day of the week practically for a couple of weeks now, and we're in the fall kit building season. Anyways, I digress. This is a wonderful sounding tube, and I think we've only got something like 4 of them left.
Yeah, probably just 2 matched pairs. They're just fantastic. I think we were always expecting to have these around to keep in the system as a sort of a reference pair. Maybe we should squirrel some aside.
You keep saying that, and then we never do.
Yeah. Well, anytime somebody asks us for something, it's hard to say no, and we send stuff out the door all the time that we'd rather keep. But, we've got lots of variety to roll.
Our rule is we don't keep anything.
Yeah.
In fact,
as much as we want to.
I can remember somebody made a comment, a couple of years ago, it really pissed me off.
About hoarding tubes.
He accused us of being hoarders, and I thought, what is he talking about? We sell everything. We don't hoard anything.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, so let's just take a quick look at 3 of them here in particular. So we've got that GT or GTA straight plate. We've got the RCA 5691, and we've got a Raytheon 6SN7 GTB that we've shown before. And all 3 of these show examples of extra strengthening on the tube. So you have extra whiskers here for vibration protection. You have extra support rods to try and keep the plates stable on the inside. And of course you have the Myconol bases on them, helping to make sure the bases survive. So yeah, we have quite a variety of these, and I think we're going to go and have a listen because we were able to find enough of these 3 in particular that we can get some matched pairs in the store. We'll get those out there in a bit, but let's have a listen first.
I felt you move somewhere beside me. I searched around but couldn't find you. In your wild, wild garden, I will be. In your garden, under the magnolia tree. This night has a magical touch, something to be unsaid, something to last forever. In your wild, wild garden, I will be.
Okay, those were some of your favorite test tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you all think of them? Did you notice a big difference between the Tung-Sol and the Sylvanias? I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're both at the top when it comes to sonics and even reliability, particularly with the Sylvanias. They just seem to keep going forever and ever. But the early Tung-Sol and the early Sylvanias are wonderful tubes. There is a significant difference, though, and the Sylvanias tend to have what we call the Sylvania house sound, which is a warm, rich mid-range with good detail. So the Sylvanias are really well-balanced tube. The Tung-Sols take detail to another level. They're not a totally neutral tube. They still sound like a 6SN7. So there's a bit of warmth in the mids.
But in terms of detail, they're probably one of the most detailed ones out there.
Probably one of the most detailed tubes ever made. Now, in order to hear that level of sonic detail in a recording, you need a very high resolving system. And once you have a system at that level of performance, like we do, and many audiophiles do, you can hear into the recording, all the way into the studio, all the way into even, little noises coming off of the lips of a singer. You can hear into the mastering work. It's just, in some ways, it's distracting because if there is a little something wrong or different, those tubes really highlight it.
You notice it right away. Yeah.
You notice it right away. There's no smoothing that over. So normally we just show off a single tube because we might have, a dozen, 20, even 40 or 50 of them in stock. These are so hard to find enough to match up that what we've done is we're showing them off as the match pairs as they would go into the store.
Yep.
Now, one thing I want to make sure that we're clear on, not all brown basses are true phenolic basses.
Right.
Some of them, especially the later types,
and modern production,
and I would say all modern production, but it's probably an exception, it can be plastic. So just like, a standard plastic injection molded black base is just a colored plastic or a red base.
Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not like we're planning on sending these tubes to war again. But, it's just good to know.
It's good to know the history of how we ended up with brown-based tubes. And I think the other thing, too, that I wanted to mention that we were chatting about is that I think militaries around the world like the idea of having distinctive bases on their military tubes. Because tubes in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s were high-demand consumer products.
Yep.
And if tubes went walkies from the inventory and you had those in your home, well, it would be pretty obvious where they came from, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. So,
You see other labeling attempts like that with Sylvania and their red labels for OEM replacements, I believe. And you see that kind of thing all the time still.
Yeah, red labeled tubes were generally speaking for wholesale purposes only. So that was technicians would be using them, repairmen would be using them, and it was to identify them not only as being a wholesale tube, but also for warranty purposes. But that we're off topic. So why don't you show off some of the pairs you've got, Charles?
Oh, well, we have an assortment of the standard bottle Tung-Sols up here, along with a pair of the tall boys. Unfortunately, this is the only pair of the tall boys that we have, and they have slightly different colored phenolic resin bases, but otherwise they're identical.
Now,
and
you've put them all in the store as good used.
Yeah.
But
probably at least half of these are new old stock. But if we didn't put them all in as used, we wouldn't have matched pairs to sell, and we're not going to sit on them for a decade while we wait for more of them.
Or forever.
Yeah.
So you've sort of put the pricing somewhere more closer to what a good used tube would sell for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then somebody's going to get a bargain. I mean, brown-based military 6SN7s are some of the most expensive 6SN7s ever made. And I think you're probably well below market price with some of your pricing. So.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We also have some fantastic singles that aren't matched up. So if you have an amp that takes a single tube in a gain stage, we'd have some options for you.
So what else do you have? You've got the Tungs and you've got Sylvanias.
We got some Sylvanias. So these are the straight plates that we were looking at earlier, and we have, I believe, 3 or 4 match pairs of them. We couldn't get them all on screen. And these are just fantastic tubes. They were built around the same time as the straight plate GTAs, which are one of our favorite 6SN7s ever made, just like the Tung-Sols, and people are going to be really happy with them, I'm sure.
Yeah, and these are mostly what, GTWs?
Yeah, so they're labeled as WGTs or WGTAs. That's almost certainly because of the military procurement process. So if the procurement office says we need a bunch of 6SN7 WGTs, and Sylvania says, well, we're only making WGTAs now, but let's slap the right label on them and send them off so nobody complains.
So these are all probably GTA equivalent or higher specs.
Yep.
So they should be safe in pretty much all modern equipment.
Yep, they should be.
Yeah, and in the case of the Sylvanias, these are just basically the highest spec GTA or WGT. Did I get that right? WGTA?
WGT and WGTA.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse people. So not a very common tube. Well, thanks for spending all that time, Charles, working on that. That was quite a chore getting them all matched up. And actually, I did the testing.
Yeah, you did the testing. I did the matching.
Yeah, Charles is...
Well, thank you for working on it.
Yeah. Well, Charles has been really busy working on our new modern line of kit preamps. And so I've been taking over more of his duties of cleaning and testing tubes. Mm-hmm. So, and if you stayed till the very end, here's some discount codes to help you out. We can reach almost everybody with a flat rate $20 shipping. Except if you're in a difficult to ship region. Send us a note before you order and we'll take a look at where you are. And if your order is $150 or more after discount, shipping's on us, folks. And of course, there's always a Cheers code to save you some money, and there's a easy to figure out one, and we've been giving out lots of bigger discounts. Anyways, stay safe, everyone. Have fun. This is Jim.
And Charles.
Signing off. Cheers, everyone.